Cancer, this is your week ahead astrology forecast from Astrology Motivation by Born Without Boundaries. Welcome everybody, my name is Michelle, and what I'm going to do in this video is go through the major planetary aspects and transits and how, in relation to how they interact with and impact your natal sun and you. So I'll start really wide, broad, with the things that will impact everybody, and then we'll narrow down to all Cancers, sort of the energies that are really going to impact all Cancerians. And then we'll dig down even deeper and go into specific areas of the Cancer zodiac. So if your sun sign, if your Cancer sun is located somewhere between 0 and 10 degrees Cancer, you are a Cancer 1. If your natal sun is located somewhere between 10 and 20 degrees Cancer, you are Cancer 2. And if your natal sun is located somewhere between 20 and 29 degrees Cancer, you are Cancer 3s. So why do I do that? Because there's about basically 29 degrees difference between the beginning of Cancer season and the end of Cancer season, and what's acting upon the same planet acting upon natal sun in the beginning of Cancer season is going to impact the end of Cancer season very differently. And you're going to see that very, very clearly here, where there are some extreme differences between the impact of the interactions because they're different angles, right? 30 degrees is the difference between a sextile and a square, and that's a dynamically different energy that's created there. It's a different relationship. So it's going to impact you guys in a different way. I encourage you to please watch the whole video and not just listen for your specific decan, because there are a lot of planets that are transiting the decans, not necessarily transiting the zodiac signs into different signs, but transiting the decans. So there is a sliding and like kind of there's an overlay, not overlay. Oh, I gotta lose words. Between these, it's overlap. Yeah, there you go. I know some of you were out there being like, Michelle, overlap. I know. There's an overlap. So definitely listen, because according to the comments, a lot of you guys are finding that there is a lot of overlap between these energies, and that you're experiencing, or at least picking up on, different energies from different decans, especially with a sign as intuitive and psychic as Cancer. It will behoove you to listen to the whole reading. Now, there's a lot going on, and I gotta tell you, it is a huge week for you guys. There is a full moon on April 5th, 6th. So, full moons are always big. There's always, pay attention to this. Something happens on April 4th, right before the full moon, that is also very interesting and will impact you guys, a specific set of you, really intensely. And we're gonna go into that. This week, overall, the major transit that's happening is Mercury into Taurus. So Mercury is moving from Aries into Taurus on Monday, and that will change the modality of communications. Communications will get slower, more pragmatic, more respectful, responsible, and they won't seek to move quickly. They'll seek to sustain. That's the impact that Taurus energy has on things. The good news for most of you guys is that is sextile to what's going on in Cancer. Cancer and Taurus have this very harmonious energy between the two of them. So it's not going to really butt heads with a lot of you. At the very, very end of Taurus season, when Mercury first drops into Taurus, at the very, very end of Cancer season, that could technically be a square, but it'll only last for a couple of days. So we will get into that when we cover the decans. But ultimately, it should be pretty favorable for us as Mercury slides through Cancer. And then we also have the full moon, which definitely impacts Cancerians, but it impacts everybody. And what's special about this full moon is that the sun during this full moon, because a full moon happens when the moon is in complete opposition to the sun. So now if you've seen it in your natal chart, my moon is in opposition to my sun. That doesn't actually mean anything horrible. It means that you were born on or around a full moon. That's what it means. You were born on or around a full moon. And if you can see that there's almost really, really close, like the opposition is less than 5 degrees, you were born on a full moon. So you'll know that when you look at your natal chart. But this full moon is special because the sun is conjunct Chiron when it happens. So let's talk a little bit about the sun conjuncting Chiron, because that absolutely impacts everybody. The sun conjunct Chiron is almost how we are inspired by suffering and pain. Either our own personal suffering and pain and motivated and inspired to do something about it, or we have to fix it, we have to heal it, or we get really creative and we start to invent things or engineer things because of it. It sort of becomes our purpose to push us forward. That's the impact that the sun conjunct Chiron has on people. It could also be that what really comes to light is different inconsistencies or ways that we suffer based on if we have shamed ourselves or hurt ourselves or feel that we should be ashamed of ourselves. But the wonderful thing is it's a full moon, and that means it's time for us to let that shit go. And so that is really the catharsis that is going to happen around this full moon, while Pluto is square to the nodes. And that is really big energy because it means this is a turning point in humanity, for humanity. And this really personalizes that full moon, really personalizes it for us, because Pluto will switch around all of humanity, global humanity. But this brings it on home real personal and says this is a turning point in our lives. This is when we let go of what we thought we were and we accept what we have become or are becoming, or we accept what we have now and try to figure or plot our path from that point instead of constantly looking back. And there will be, especially for a group of you, a twist, kind of a little bit of a melancholy that happens this week. We'll get into it, I promise. Now, another big thing that's happening, not huge, but it's going to could impact everybody, is Venus is conjunct Uranus this week. So basically, that's kind of odd. And that's surprises, financial surprises, romance surprises about what happens and what you're attracted to. Maybe want to change the way you look, or change who you're dating, or spice things up in your relationship, or completely rebel against it. That's the kind of energy that Venus conjunct Uranus has. And now Uranus is always there, right? It's always there. So it's always mischievous. But when it conjuncts another planet, or another planet usually conjuncts it, we kind of know at that point where we can expect those surprises or those little personal rebellions. So Venus says, now all of a sudden, Venus tells us that those rebellions are going to happen in our looks, what we're attracted to, our romantic relationships, our money, our finances. Big changes can happen and surprises will happen, usually motivated through us or by us. So that can kind of spice things up, at least through, say, Monday. I think that's the 4th. Through Monday, when that conjunction starts to break up. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, I should say this. This week is from March 31st to April 6th. I do put that in the title and in the thumbnail, but just so that you guys know, this is your astrology forecast from March 31st to April 6th. So that's what I'm talking about. And this says that's what I'm saying on April 4th, which I believe is a Monday, is really when that starts to pull apart and is not going to cause so much trouble. But it will be specifically impacted on those of you born mid-Cancer season. Different kinds of financial changes, different kinds of romantic changes, relationship changes. But we'll dig into that when we get into the decans. So back to this new moon. This full moon. I keep saying new moon. No, let's get into the decans. I think this is a good time because we're going to talk more about the things that I just talked about, but we're going to go into talking about them, how they directly impact you and your specific position in Cancer, okay? So let's start with Cancer 1. Cancer 1s are those natal suns between 0 and probably 9 degrees Cancer, right? So there's 10 degrees. We start at 0 and we go to 29. And then we go back to 0 and go to 29. So it's a total of 30 degrees. So it's about 0 to 9 degrees. How that translates into the dates is Cancers basically who are born in June. It's the June Cancer group. Your natal sun is conjunct to Mars because Mars is at 3 degrees Cancer. And over the course of this week, it will go 3 degrees to 6 degrees Cancer. And during that time, Mars will remain trine to the South Node, trine to Saturn, and sextile to Mercury in the North Node. Mercury is conjunct the North Node for most of this week. So that means understanding of where we're headed. It's all of a sudden clear to us. It's all of a sudden tangible. We understand it. We comprehend it. Maybe even we now have made a decision about where we are personally headed. But for you guys, this is all happening in sextile, which means it's happening in a very positive way. It's opening up opportunities for you. It's helping you. Opportunities are going to open up for you. They're probably going to be different than what you expected or where you came from. But it's still fortunate. It's still helpful. And it's still kind of exciting. So you guys, your natal suns are conjunct to Mars. Things are moving forward, but in a different direction. So there is progress, but it's definitely different from where you started out, which is represented by the South Node. You know that there's been a curve, but it's maybe a curve upward, right? And then you are sextile your natal sun, not just Mars, which is conjunct your natal sun, but your natal suns are sextile to the North Node, and they are sextile to Mercury by Monday. Now, by Monday. So Mercury will just slide into Taurus and conjunct the North Node on Monday. So this is when it really starts to pop off for you guys and impact you guys. And having Mercury sextile to your natal sun is wonderful. It's just kind of, it doesn't last long, but it clarifies the brain. It clears things up. It makes you articulate. It makes you be able to represent yourself very well. This is a great time to take tests or do interviews or write something down, write official paperwork, because you'll be intellectual and you'll be precise and articulate, and your brain will be very clear and you'll be on point. So that's through the end of this week. Mercury will be sextile to your natal suns. There's also a natural trine. It's not just through Mars because Mars is conjunct your natal suns. No, your natal suns are trine to Saturn, which is also getting along with authority figures, getting along with rules, laws, and regulations, feeling comfortable with things moving slowly, and with your life maturing. Changing, growing up, but thinking of things in a more pragmatic way. Okay? And then we also have a quincunx to Pluto. Quincunx to Pluto means change, and it is uncomfortable. Quincunxes are a little bit uncomfortable. It doesn't mean they're bad. It just tells me that you will feel it. You will feel certain things end, but new things are coming up right behind them. Like coming up right behind them. What did I want to say to you guys in particular? I'll read it on. Let's go on to, because I wrote everything down. You guys can see this, right? I mean, this is like, I'm all over the place, right? Hold on. I wrote down here, April 4th. That's a Tuesday. The moon is in Virgo, but at the very end. So it is in opposition to Neptune. What this signifies for all Cancerians, this will impact us all, but especially those of you who are born in the beginning of Cancer season, because you will be kind of sextile to this awakening. It's like waking up from a dream, waking up from a fantasy on April 4th. That's Tuesday. It's almost like reality challenges fantasy. And since this is all happening in a trine to both Pluto and to Venus, it could be that you're waking up to the reality of your relationships and why it has to change. And it's trine, so there's a comfort there. It's almost like an intentional rebalance of, okay, I got to get my shit together here. Because now all of a sudden, reality, because the moon is in Virgo. And fantasy, because Neptune is Neptune, and Neptune is in Pisces, and Pisces is Pisces. So there's a sense of a clash between emotionally, the moon is in Virgo, you feel the reality. You understand the reality emotionally now. It hits you emotionally. And that's trying to Pluto, because Pluto wants you to change. Trying to Venus, because it's a change in your finances or your romantic relationship, or who you're attracted to. So there's a dynamic change right before the full moon where all of us get a chance to release and let go. And so that's going to impact all Cancerians, but specifically for Cancer ones. You guys, because of where, especially those of you born at the very beginning of Cancer season, so that's like Cancer Gemini cusp, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, that's going to be sextile to you guys. So it's going to open up opportunities for you. It's going to help you release and see other opportunities. Going to be especially favorable for you guys. Okay? Let's go on to Cancer 2s, and if I have to backtrack, I will. Cancer 2s, the full moon is going to be especially emotional for you and frustrating, because your natal suns are square to the full moon where it's positioned, because it's kind of happening in the middle of Libra, and that puts you in direct square to what's happening. So full moon square to full moon, you're having trouble letting go. You're having trouble maybe with some acceptance or an emotional purge of some sort. Because you have trouble with it doesn't mean you can't do it. And in fact, once you do, it can release a whole bunch of happiness. But you really do have to face this instead of try to deny it. And the more you struggle with a square, the worse it gets. The more you just say acceptance and let me learn, then I can now I can really release the positive side of the square and the growth part of the square. So it's hard to swallow. There's hard to swallow. Square to the full moon, when your natal sun is square to the moon, but square to the full moon, that is in opposition to the sun conjunct Chiron, some of these growing pains are really hard to swallow. Some of these difficult lessons are just hard to swallow. It doesn't mean they're impossible to swallow, but it's going to be a hard lesson, something in your face, harder to let go of. You're not completely without help this week. You guys are sextile. Your natal sun is sextile to Uranus. And while Venus is conjunct Uranus, this means that there could be definitely some surprises or some spice that happens to your finances or your relationships. That only goes through Friday, Saturday, though, because then Venus will move on. Your natal sun is square to the current sun. Your natal sun is square to Chiron. And your natal sun is square to Jupiter. Especially those of you born at the very end of Cancer 2s. So that would be more people born toward like the, 8th, 9th, 10th of July. Especially those, square to Jupiter means your head is big. It kind of like, that's kind of what it is. When when your natal sun is square to Jupiter, it's kind of like, it's almost like you're having trouble comprehending things because they should have been, you were either going too fast or getting too big for yourself, or thinking too fast and ahead of yourself, or you overestimated your value. So there can be also an ego check that happens. Listen, I'm a Cancer too, and my Jupiter is conjunct my sun by 2 degrees. So not only is my natal sun square Jupiter, my natal Jupiter is square Jupiter. So I'm getting fed like a cardboard sandwich right now. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. It's pretty tough. It's pretty tough to swallow, but lessons, the universe is trying to teach you lessons. This is tough love, but it's real love. So just get out your pen and paper and sit yourself in a bathtub as you study. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like it's going to take some calming. Absolutely. 100%. Cancer 3s. Your natal sun is sextile to Venus by Sunday. Not until Sunday, but by Sunday. Those are the very beginning of Cancer 3. So, 11th, 12th, maybe 13th of July, your natal suns by Thursday are going to be sextile to Venus. And that's a very lovely, romantic, happy, optimistic energy. maybe potential in romance, maybe potential to make money, depending on what's important to you guys. You are not without your challenges this week, however, because your natal suns by Sunday are square to the North Node and Mercury by Monday. So it's also a sense of not really wanting or having trouble shifting toward your future, making hard choices when it comes to your future. Not impossible choices, but maybe making difficult choices. The best thing to do is slow things down and not try to rush and just really think through. And maybe choices will open up if you just let this time pass. Mercury moves quickly, so it won't be square to your natal suns for long, maybe a couple of days. By Thursday, your natal suns will also be square to Jupiter, because Jupiter will, by Thursday, fall into the third decan of Aries, so it'll be at 20 degrees Aries. So those of you born at the very beginning of third decan are going to be, now your natal sun is square Jupiter. So once again, how this is going to impact you: disappointment, a sense of, oh, you expected it to be up here and it was only here. It doesn't mean that you didn't make progress, and it doesn't mean that you didn't have a win. The real problem with your natal sun square Jupiter is expectation. Your expectation was way the fuck up here, and since you only got here, you think you failed, when you really didn't. It was just the expectations. So the real challenge is to curb the expectations, to curb that ego, to curb that big head. Because if you see it for what it is still probably a gain. Those of you who are born at the very, very end of the third decan, say July 20th, 21st, are quincunx to Saturn, which means that there are certain hardships or difficulties that you're having when it comes to rules, regulations, maybe not even rules or regulations against you, just things being unclear to you, or rules or regulations themselves changing, and so you end up breaking them because you didn't know they existed. Something like that can trip you up easily with a quincunx. It's not horrible, but it's frustrating. Could also be frustration with a father figure or any kind of boss or authority figure, just kind of wearisome and bothersome for the next week or so. And then we have trine to Neptune, which means that your easy go-to escape all this discomfort is fantasy. So your big complications this week, or your big challenges this week, is to not have a big head, not let those expectations get away from you, and to keep yourself grounded in reality, which you can do. Walk barefoot, ground yourself. You can ground yourself through yoga by getting into your breath as well. So you ground yourself in yoga through your breath. And you can also ground yourself physically by putting your feet in dirt. Helping yourself ground yourself this week is going to be really, really important for you guys, because it'll help lessen the expectations, right? And help you appreciate just the reality of what you have in front of you. And it will help you breathe through and have more patience when you butt up against or get frustrated by those Saturnian things you can't really control. And then, of course, at the very, very end, say July 21st especially, you guys, your natal suns are in direct opposition to Pluto, and that's where it will be for a very long time. And that means that there's a lot of dynamic changes that are happening to your life, and they're sort of fated, and they set you up for it, and you can't really change it. So there's just a sense of settling into what's happening and what can I do with it. So acceptance is also a big lesson for you guys this week. Let me read a little bit deeper into this. So I wrote this down. I don't know if you guys can see this. If you guys can see this little drawing, if you can screenshot it. That's basically what's happening between the North Node and the South Node. And you see it looks like an archer's bow. And that's kind of what it is. What's happening is we're being catapulted from where we were into where we're headed, or at least in terms of acceptance, right? But for those of you, there's a ping of regret for maybe what I have to leave behind. And I thought that was for a certain group of you, but let me continue. There's a ping of regret for what I left behind. And and I'm excited about the future, but did I do enough? Did I use my talents the way that I should have, or am I just settling? And that is really going to be a hard thing for some of you. You know, we tend to be a melancholy bunch, us Cancerians, and understanding that that is kind of our nature, but it's also a choice. Like, where do you choose to put your mind? So often we choose to put our minds in the past because we're Cancerians, we're water signs, we are the history, the past. But we can choose to put our minds toward the future, and only in comparison of what we think we were supposed to do with ourselves are we suffering disappointment. If we just look at what we have now and where we can move forward, it'll feel so much better and actually happen a lot smoother. Because, like it or not, here it comes. We are turning a corner in our lives right now. Realization of where I'm headed, followed by this memory. Could be melancholy, could be bittersweet, could just be kind of sweet, right? Depending on how attached you are to it, of where I came from. Sometimes we feel melancholy just because, oh my God, look how far I've come. But, oh my God, like maybe finally the realization of I have really come so far and I have so much to look forward to. And perspective is going to help a lot with how you experience this week. So I love you guys so much. Please do leave your comments below and let me know how this is all impacting you. It is a big week for Cancerians. This is a really pretty big full moon that's coming up to us, for us to release and let go, and understand that on this full moon, the letting go means an arrow is being shot. So have you aimed it in the direction that you want it to go? Because it's gonna land. I love you guys, and hopefully you will join me every week. Subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell so you always can come back and participate in the live astrology chats every week. Also, there is a Cancer-specific week ahead tarot card reading on Born Without Boundaries Tarot, and I hope you'll join me there following this video. I love you, and I will talk to you next week. Bye, Cancer.